Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jayakula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are.
This morning you said something about disease and dis-ease. I think basically you were saying that it's forgetting on a cellular level. Are you talking about it?
From the perspective of Ayurveda and also Trika, every cell in your body has tejas. It has intelligence and clarity. Tejas means the fire of intelligence. The manifestation of tejas is not just intellect. Because as we know, there's plenty of people who are smart, who are really, really, really dumb, who really have no actual intelligence, even though they have PhDs and whatever. The real intelligence, first of all, comes from the heart. That's where actual intelligence comes from. But it's always married to clarity. And fire element is bringing this clarity of purpose, clarity of understanding of one's self-purpose. Every cell in the body has some kind of purpose or another. Forgetting that purpose or having confused cells or cells that are lacking in clarity is one of Ayurveda's main ways of talking about disease. The tejas of the cells is impaired. So you have cells doing things that they shouldn't be doing and not doing things that they should be doing. They're not producing insulin. They're not staying where they're supposed to stay. Just like we lose contact with our purpose, we forget who we are. We forget what we're really supposed to be doing, which is the basic definition of non-enlightenment. At a cellular level and an energetic level and a mind level, we can do the same thing. Intellect and actual intelligence are not the same thing, according to these traditions. Intellect is very much subject to karmas, but that primordial intelligence, that intelligence that is going along with wisdom, that has a sense of wisdom, that can discern wisdom and align itself with wisdom, that's our real intelligence, and that is coming from the heart. So the heart space is considered to be the source of that intelligence in a human life. It's coming through from the absolute, through the heart space and informing everything. In a person, I think I said this morning, dis-ease and disease. It's exactly the same process. We have a sense of dis-ease because we have a basic experience of separation that creates uneasiness from the get-go, the minute we're born. Unless we're born enlightened, which who is? Nobody, except for maybe avatars, possibly. So we have this sense of uneasiness or dis-ease based on our dualistic experience that is not informed by a conscious experience of the absolute. We have forgotten who we are. We have forgotten our real purpose. We have lost a certain amount of skill. We are lacking a certain amount of clarity, just like the cells in our body when they go awry. So the process of doing spiritual practice can be seen as a process of reconnecting with that primordial intelligence so that we remember what we're doing and have more clarity and more skill as a result and feel more unitive rather than separate. There's only a few principles that are operating all the way through reality from the absolute to rocks that just recapitulate or reiterate in slightly different ways, creating a lot of variety. But once you start to recognize those patterns, they're not really patterns, but protocols on these spectrums from less contracted to more contracted. Once you start to recognize those, it becomes easier to understand how things work, to understand that what's going on with our cells is also going on with our lives. There's a spectrum there, and that kind of process of forgetting your purpose and losing contact with intelligence is operating at all these different levels, creating enormous variety, but also the same in some way, the same process. Many, many more people in the world now are feeling the pain of what is happening, feeling the pain of what is happening, not only to them, but to other people. That's the most extraordinary part of this, to me anyway, that there's more people in the world actually feeling care and concern about what happens to the other person, people they don't even know. This is the fruit of Bad Stop. Bad Stop has a lot of wisdom. I mean, we would hope that we would stop before we got to Bad Stop. But when we don't, we get a kind of collapse. It could be a health collapse. It could be an emotional collapse. It could be a political collapse. It could be an environmental collapse. Whatever it is, Bad Stop is a collapse. It forces you to stop. You cannot keep doing what you've been doing in the way you've been doing it. That's what Bad Stop means. And of course, that means it's very painful a lot of the time and intense. These things are operating at every level. So in the traditions of spiritual teachings from the part of the world that Trika is from, in the traditions of divination from that part of the world, there is a tradition of using hyperbolic language when delivering teachings. If you do this, you will freeze in 10 cold hells for all eternity. If you don't listen to this divination, you'll experience 10 years of trauma, blockage, and disaster. This is actually part of the reading protocol of these traditions, that hyperbole is built into it. And you have that understanding that, okay, maybe I'm going to freeze in 10 hells for all eternity, but probably things are just going to be more difficult. But if I weren't talked to in that way, I wouldn't listen. So this is like another example of how the traditions themselves understand that force sometimes needs to be applied in order to change the momentum of our karmas, which also have force. Like our conventions, our normal habitual ways of doing things sometimes require force to change.
Are you saying that Bad Stop is built in or hardwired into us?
Not hardwired into you, hardwired into reality.
In terms of the way that humans respond to situations where a change is warranted that is good for us and we don't take that chance. It sounds like more often than not, we don't make the change. We need those increasing amounts of pain in order to change.
That's not true. It depends on so many different things. You're capable of many more responses other than avoidance, I hope. But we're all capable of many different kinds of responses to things. Sometimes it's easier for reality to reach us, and sometimes it's harder. And that depends on how entrenched those karmas are, how much momentum they have. It depends on what time of life we're in, or you could say where we are in our astrology, because there's different times in our life we're going to have more sensitivity or less sensitivity. It depends on how much sadhana we've been doing, how much we've learned to read the hints, and how much we know what's coming if we don't listen. Like after a while, you're hanging around this reality for a while, getting more sensitized to it, and you start to understand more, just like what I'm telling you about. And so you get to understand, okay, this was just a light and polite knock at the door. So if I don't listen to that, you know the door is going to get kicked in. And then if I don't listen to that, the house is going to get burned down. You know? So I'll just listen now. You start to be able to see. You start to understand where you are in that spectrum. And maybe self-preservation sets in, a desire for self-preservation of some sort.
I've been looking at how deeply I'm avoiding so many big things in my life. Like I'm avoiding life. I've been thinking about it like an addiction to numbing out So I'd like to hear you talk about sobriety in that kind of context.
Well, it's actually a really good moment to avoid things. I think we're all being a little avoidant at the moment, or at moments right now. But yes, I know what you're talking about. If you want to think about it in the framework of addiction, addiction is a super interesting phenomenon in light of spiritual practice. Because you can call the goal of addiction numbing out, whatever it is, hiding alone or social media or games or drugs or drinking or whatever it is. You can even be addicted to socializing, which is kind of a weird phenomenon. But the purpose of addiction is the same in a sense as the purpose of spiritual life, which is to be relieved of the burden of the self, or to be relieved of the burden of the small self. So your urge to do something spiritual and your urge to numb out or withdraw in certain ways are not entirely different. They aren't entirely different things. It's just that doing spiritual practice and being involved with other practitioners will lead you to being able to host, accommodate, and acclimatize to more sensation and more engagement. Whereas the other way of losing the burden of the self will cause more isolation and loneliness in the end. They have the same motivation in a sense, but they have the opposite results, the opposite fruits. And they can really work in tandem, because one of the reasons people numb out is because they have a hard time having sensations about things, or emotions and sensations are overwhelming in some way or another. And it can be even just the emotions and feelings that you have about yourself, not necessarily about anybody else, but people also have experiences of other people and of environments that can be overwhelming, and numbing out seems like a good idea. So what spiritual practice does is it opens the gates of our senses and creates a situation where we are going to experience more intimacy with people, not less. But for most of us, it does it very, very, very slowly. And the idea there is that we can become acclimatized slowly to more engagement and more sensation and greater actual intimacy. So the first thing I'd say is, don't berate yourself. Your heart is good and your motivations are good. The second thing I would say is, you didn't cause this and it's not your fault. There's something ancestral and familial going on. You inherited this. You didn't make it happen. It's now landed in your lap, but it is not your fault, and you didn't create it or cause it, and you're not being punished or anything like that. Having met spiritual stuff, I mean, not just from me, but I know you're involved in other things too, you have an opportunity to help out your whole family line. In a sense, you are somewhat charged with the opportunity to break this pattern. Somebody on Instagram was asking, what do you feel is your duty? I was thinking about it, and it's not a word that I use very often. But the thing that I came up with was, I do feel a duty to try my best to meet the spiritual opportunity that I've been given. So instead of thinking of this in all the ways you do as some sort of personal problem that you have, which it is not, it is a collective problem or a collective limitation. Think of it as a spiritual opportunity to do some healing for your whole family, and that your only real job is to meet that opportunity as best you can. The blessing is, the mercy is that you can do it slowly. You don't need to do anything super fast. But luckily for you, your propensity to do things slowly is completely appropriate here. And all you need to do is commit yourself to a daily spiritual practice and just keep doing it for the rest of your life. That's all you really need to do. However fast things happen or however slow things happen, that's how they'll happen. That's how they'll happen. And you will have done your duty if you do that. You don't really have any other job. This isn't pie in the sky. I'm telling you what's absolutely the rock bottom truth for you. Take it to heart. Don't forget it. There's no urgency about transforming our experience. But we do need to have consistency if we want to do that. How quickly or slowly it happens is not up to us. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jayakula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.